Hey everybody, we are moving along quite well on our research paper with the steps that are required to complete a strong submission. And the next step in our journey is to complete a works cited page. A long time ago, the word that we used to use for a works cited page was a bibliography. It was basically a list of the works that you consulted during the course of your research. Today, we simply call it a works cited page because these are the works that you're probably going to be referring to during the course of your paper. Now, I had asked you already to secure 5 critical sources, but for this works cited page, we're only asking you to put down 4 of those 5 secondary sources. And for the first time, the primary source, meaning the volume of poetry. Now, the neat thing to do with this is that you have all your index cards with you. The only index card you don't have is one for your volume of poetry. So you could consider at this time making a card up, giving it the number 6 if you've already used up to number 5 for your critics, and create a card that's going to be based upon your poet's name. So if it's Robert Frost, you would have Frost, comma, Robert, whatever the title of the collection is, the publisher with a comma, the publication date, and you're good to go. So now, when you're ready to put together your works cited page, you want to use Times New Roman font, and you want it to be font size 12. Okay, you're going to have one entry for your primary source, and you're going to have 4 entries for those secondary sources. So you decide, if you want to put all 5 of them because you haven't determined which ones you want to keep and which ones you don't want to keep, then that's fine. You could actually have, 6 entries on works cited page. That's great. But you only have to have 4 at this point. You don't follow the numeration in the corner any longer for a works cited page. It's alphabetical order. And if you have an article that didn't have an author and you had to quote it just based on the title, I'll show you what to do with that. The first line of each entry, which would be the last name of the author, will be all the way over to the left side. Okay, so I would have my last name at the top of the page with the number 1. I would center the words works cited, and I'll show you this on the next page, right here. And then when it comes to the left margin, let's say alphabetically, I have Maya Angelou, and she's the first alphabetical name that comes up. She will be all the way at the left. And then depending on how long my entry is, if it goes to a second line, this second line will be indented. Everything is double spaced. And it would kind of look something like this. Okay, so if you notice here, the top right-hand side, about 1 inch from the top of the paper, you would type in your last name and the page number, which in this case will be page number 1. Notice there's no punctuation at all, just your name and number 1. Okay. Works cited is centered. Notice it's not underlined. There's no quotation marks around it. It's not in bold. It just is what it is. This particular entry page has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It actually has way more entries than you would need. But it's good though, because you can get a look at a couple of different samples. Obviously, this one is my primary source. And I probably wasn't able to get all 3 poems that I wanted from this one collection. And that's why I have a second collection with this poem in it listed here. And I had to get it off the internet, as you can see. Now, what is this? What is going on here? These 3 hyphens. That's because both entries are William Cullen Bryant. He's my author. And because I'm probably going to take 2 poems from here and I had to go to the internet to get the third one that I want to use. I'm having 2 entries for him. Most of us will probably only have 1 entry under our poet's name because we're able to find all 3 poems in that one collection. Okay. And then what am I doing for these other ones? These other ones are all secondary sources. All of the rest of them are secondary sources. And you can see some are alphabetized according to the last name of the writer, the critic. I'm just basically copying what I had on my source cards. This article did not have an author. That's why I'm alphabetizing it with quotation marks around it under the letter B, because that's the first letter of the title. And that's how it would appear on my source card anyway. So if you're looking at that one and saying, what's going on with that one? And what's going on with this one? Same thing. This is an article. It was an introductory article. It was actually in our iBook. And I really liked something that was in there, but I don't have an author to whom I can give attribution. So I just took it from our iBook, Kellenberg English Department, 2016, and it was on page 66. Okay, there's only one other tricky thing I want to let you know about. If any of you are taking a critic from an introduction that comes from your volume of poetry, that you have to be attentive to, because you're going to put all of the works cited information under whoever's name comes first. If the critic's last name were to have been before the letter BRY, the letters BRY, then I would put all the information under the critic's name. But Edward Marshall starts with an M, and he's coming from the collected poems. And so the MLA says, well, you don't have to rewrite everything. Just give us an abbreviation of the title of the collection. You can skip the editor, skip the publisher, skip the publication date. Just give us the page numbers for the entire intro. So for Marshall, I have an abbreviated one because he comes after Brian. But if for some reason the person who wrote the introduction was actually alphabetically before the letter B, let's say his last name was Abram or Abrams, then I would put all the information under Abrams. And when I got to Bryant, I would do Bryant, comma, William Cullen, CP. And then I probably wouldn't need anything else at all. Okay, I hope this makes sense to you. Please see me if you have any further questions. But this will be due next in our journey. And remember, you guys want to have a minimum of 5 total entries. And that would encompass both the volume of poetry and 4 critics. Good luck.